Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I have my yearly top 20 coasters video ready for everyone to see, so here you go. These are the 20 greatest coasters I've ridden. Before I start the rankings, I will put the previous rankings for the coasters on the screen if they were on my list last year. Also, if you can't tell, I'm a little sick. Allergy season and all, so I may not sound right in this video, but let's start. 20 is Maverick at Cedar Point. This is a solid launch coaster. It is a bit too whippy for me, but it is still a nice ride. The second launch really packs a punch and all of the elements are very well placed. This is just an intense ride that tries to rip your face off. But honestly, it's not my type of ride. But it is a good launch coaster with good elements. 19 is Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. It's decent, but the ride I had on the outer wing seat was very rough. It would be a lot higher on this list if I did not have that ride. It is still a good ride at Cedar Point, but it was too rough on that ride to be any higher. But the near misses do need to get a shout out. I love the keyhole, and it is a good ride. If it wasn't so rough on that one ride, it would definitely be higher. 18 is Skyrocket at Kennywood. This is a damn solid ride. Second half aside, it's great. There is a bit of airtime on the vertical drops too. The 0G roll is still amazing, and the launch packs a bit of a punch too. The part before the mid-course is top 10 worthy, but the lackluster second half makes this ride worse. The airtime hills at the end are just sad. This thing is still great, just what could have been in the second half. 17 is Valraven at Cedar Point. This is a very solid ride. The first drop is amazing. The anticipation is just insane. I find the ride more consistent than Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland. That's why it's on this list. It may be a little short, but there's just less dead moments than Yukon Striker, and the drop just is a little better even though it's shorter. The drop does carry the ride though. If I get more rides on other rides next year, I would expect this to drop out, but for now, it is a top 20 coaster for me. 16 is Thunder Striker, or Intimidator at Carowinds. This is a very disappointing ride. The drop in the airtime is decent, but the trims just kill this ride. There is so much missed potential here. The other B&M Hypers have better settings than this one too, and I don't really like the theme. The airtime is good enough, and it's a B&M Hyper, so obviously it's good, but I think the trims being cut off would make this ride much better. 15 is Steel Curtain at Kennywood, one of the few rides I didn't ride on this list this year. This is a very good ride. I just moved it down a bit due to there is better rides recently on other rides I've ridden. But this is still a great ride with all the inversions and speed. I love the 0G stall over the midway. This isn't an airtime focused ride either, but it's still a bit of airtime. I just think this is a great ride with rapid fire elements that are very enjoyable to go through. Let's hope the refurbishment works to get this thing up and running. 14 is Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. The hang time on this launch coaster is some of the best out there. It is a great ride that features a decent amount of airtime too. The JoJo roll out of the station sets the hang time tone of the ride. I'm not the biggest fan of the restraints as they are quite tight, but this is still a great coaster with good launches and airtime and, of course, hang time. 13 is Candymonium at Hershey Park. This B&M Hyper coaster leaves me wanting more. I did ride it on a chilly November night, which probably played a role in it, but the trims just didn't feel very necessary. The floater you get is still great, and it's still a hyper coaster, so the drop is good and the ride is still awesome, but I just wish the trims weren't there and the ride felt more complete. It is a bit shorter than a normal B&M Hyper in my opinion. Still a good ride, just not perfect and a little underwhelming. 12 is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. This ride is great, as it's always been. The second drop is insane, especially with the Thunderbolt interaction. The turn after the drop is super intense and can sometimes make me gray out. And of course, the onslaught of airtime hills at the end. Each pop of airtime is violent and throws you out of your seat. The ride is a bit short, but doesn't leave me feeling like the ride needs to be a lot longer. It is just a great ride with good speed and violent airtime. Great job by Morgan when they transformed this thing. 11 is Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland. This is a solid B&M hyper. It has the normal things for a hyper like a solid drop and floater airtime, but I think the airtime of Behemoth is better than the airtime on Candymonium and Thunderstriker. It is a smooth experience too. I also like how you can see the water park and the Vaughn area. It is just more of the same from other B&M hypers. It's very good. Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia gets the number 10 spot. This is a great RMC. The stats may not seem insane, but this ride packs a punch. There is some fun airtime here and I love the wave turn. The drop in the pre-lift sections are other highlights. It's a little short, which is a downside, but it is a really solid ride. Very good RMC and underrated. Number 9 is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. This is once again my favorite wooden roller coaster. The twists and turns of this ride are just out of control fun, especially at night. Of course, the airtime on the small hills is very fun. This thing just never lets up. The drop is underrated and the length is actually good in my opinion. If it was longer, it may have let up the pacing, which would have made the ride worse, so the length is pretty good. No complaints here. Just so many good coasters past this ride. 8 is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This B&M Giga is crazy fun. The drop with the lake on the left and the park on the right is the best part. Some of the overbanks are very intense too. The only problem I have with this ride is the overbanks can get a little repetitive sometimes, but all of the speed on this ride just makes up for that. Just a speed machine with a bit of airtime is my kind of ride. Number 7 is Orion at Kings Island. This ride has dropped quite a bit in my rankings, but it is still a solid ride. I do notice a bit of a vibration, but that's a very big nitpick. The drop is still awesome and the wave turn is one of the many fun elements on this ride. But I do think the other B&M Gigas do their elements a bit better. It is still a great ride, and it definitely still deserves a spot in my top 10, but it is a flawed ride. So much missed potential. 6 is Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. This is an example of a ride that does its elements better than Orion. This is a great long ride with lots of speed and airtime. It has no dull moments, and you're moving at a blazing pace. All of the elements are good, and this is just a fast-paced ride. That first drop and turn are especially incredible. Just such a great ride, and the best coaster in my opinion at Canada's Wonderland, and probably the best coaster in Canada. 5 is Wildcat's Revenge at Hershey Park. This is a great RMC with lots of airtime. The pre-lift section is good, and that first drop is special. The second half of the ride isn't the greatest, but it is still solid. The first half is amazing with lots of elite elements, though. The airtime on this thing is consistent and never lets up. It is just a fast-paced ride that adds to the impressive resume of RMC. 4 is Diamondback at Kings Island. This is my favorite B&M hypercoaster. The setting, first of all, is very good. Going out into the woods and having yourself around Mystic Timbers is a fun experience. But the rest of the ride is amazing, of course. The airtime is great, the first drop is great, and the splashdown finale is fun too. The duration is insanely long. The layout does look repetitive, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Every hill feels different, and the trims don't kill the ride unlike other hypers. Thunderstriker. This is just a great roller coaster, and the best roller coaster at Kings Island. 3 is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. I won't go too in-depth here, as a review is already out on my channel, but this is a great ride. The airtime is the most of any coaster in the world, and the length of the ride is very long. The inversions are seasoned in perfectly, too. So why isn't this ride any higher? It is just too inconsistent in the morning, in my opinion, to be any higher, which is what the two coasters above this on my list can't say. Yes, it is still a fantastic ride, but the rides above it are just better in my opinion. Number 2 is Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. This was my number 1 last year, and I adore this ride. Jam-packed with a butt-ton of airtime and an inversion mixed in there too for good measure. The barrel roll drown drop is a fun drop as well, but the main catch in this thing is airtime. It is powerful and even begins to hurt at the end. This is just a great ride, but it can't even match up to the number 1 coaster on this list. And the number 1 coaster for lateral thrills in 2024 is Fury 325. This ride is bonkers at Carowinds. The drop is the best I've ever had or ridden. The treble clef is amazing. The airtime is out of control. There's just never a dull moment. It goes 95 miles an hour and it is just the perfect ride for me. It is an example of why I ride roller coasters and part of the reason we went to Charlotte in October. This ride is perfect. That is it for my rankings this year. It was a busy year for me, and I will quiet down with the parks next year, but I am so grateful for all the adventures I've been to so far, and the ones I'll go to in the future. Thanks for all the support this year. I hope to see every single one of you in 2025. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.